It is Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was another no jujitsu, get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. I keep getting kind of confused on how exactly to describe that. It's such a bullshit kind of situation that, you know, it's kind of hard to articulate. Maybe I ought to write it down, you know. Anyway, so yeah, you know, just kind of chillaxed and looked at all the fucking stupidity on my social media. Man, you guys are really fucking conned out there. I gotta tell you. I mean, really, if I wanted to, like, make people do something, and, like, I had a variety of ways to go about it, like, I would hope that I would get the kind of results that I'm seeing out there with regard to quote-unquote compliance. You know, and just the attitude department alone, I find it kind of disgusting, really. You know, it's like I was raised, you know, to be an American, you know, that we're free and that, you know, we've got these God-given rights. And this guy says that, you know, you got to do something because somebody might have a cold somewhere. And if you really, really study where it's been challenged, the limitations or prohibitions that the government has been asking for, and even down to city government, where they've chosen to enforce their shit or try to enforce their shit, they find out where it violates the Constitution. You know, the fact of the matter is that Trump hasn't given any orders. They've put out federal guidelines. Federal guidelines are different than orders. When they declare a state of an emergency and they enact all kinds of other shit like that, I mean, really, there's a lot of layers there. It's not just like he waved the magic wand and this isn't America anymore. You can't do that. Nobody can do that. And the sad part to me is that some people out there believe that that's possible. That anybody on this planet can wave a magic wand and make you not an American anymore. Let me tell you, motherfucker, that's just not true. That's just not true. You know, they can say all kinds of things. But what do you feel? What do you know? What were you raised to be? You know, I don't recall hearing about how, you know, when the Civil War happened, that it was because they weren't given a real choice in the matter. They were given a choice in the matter, and they said no. And they fought over it. And, of course, there were rule changes thereafter, but that was after it involved everybody. And I don't think we've seen that kind of conflict here in the United States, not over this meow business anyway. But I gotta tell you, I'm looking at the progression of, like, the things that are happening, and for the most part, I see it all as a completely media-generated event. There isn't anything that I've seen in my physical existence, other than, of course, the presence of additional cops and people being stupid enough to keep their businesses closed. I mean, really, that like the biggest concern you should have is not, you know, am I going to have a business later on? The biggest concern you should have is, why am I listening to these people? Why am I listening to these people? You know, what have they literally said that requires me to do what they're telling me to do? And, you know, if you know how to read what they're telling you, they're saying a bunch of things that don't really mean what they initially, you know, like the initial impression, you know, like a federal advisory. You say federal advisory. That's not a legal definition. There's no law that says, under federal guidance, you shall do. No. There's maybe some, like, liability concerns. You know, if there was a federal advisory, that means that to some extent the federal government has extinguished any liability it may have with regard to informing the public of exactly what was going on and what the status of events were. It doesn't have anything to do with, you need to stop doing business. It has to do with, if you're going to continue to do business, you might want to observe some additional protocols in your processes of doing business, because this is going on right now, and these are the ways that it can be transferred, and you might want to be watching yourself, and especially if your business includes frequent physical contact between individuals. I mean, really, that's an advisory. It's not a legal definition. It's a relief of liability to the federal government, and a bit of actionable information that you've been provided with. That's all it is. Now, your governor freaking out and saying, I'm going to suspend the Constitution, and I'm going to freaking... No, that guy is now ready for you to take him to court, because he is threatening your constitutional rights, and without cause. Or at least without sufficient cause. You know what I mean? And you really got to wonder how much of it is just the media creating shit. Like, I'll give you an example. I came across an article today concerning 32 police officers being sent to a home within Los Angeles to break up the birthday party of a 1-year-old child. Now, clearly, from the picture itself, assuming, of course, the picture was taken at the site, and that's a big assumption on my part. My apologies, LAPD, if that was, in fact, a bullshit picture that was associated with the article in question. But, of course, according to what I was seeing in the picture, there was no social distancing going on. There was no gloves. Well, no, there were gloves. They were like black leather gloves, not blue rubber gloves. There were no masks. You know, they weren't wearing no fucking hazmat suits and shit like that. They're not observing the social distancing bullshit. So, really, what is this shit? You know? I mean, to me, that says, you know, you're not willing to follow your rules. You don't have a fucking vaccine, so why are you sending cops out there without any kind of protection? Other than the fact that you're not particularly concerned about them getting COVID, enforcing your unconstitutional action of the disruption of a private gathering. You know, the problem I have is that Americans would comply at all. That's the problem I have with it. You know, the moment the cop came up to the door, I mean, unless, of course, they did a full breach team, in which case, shoot. Because they're clearly in violation of your constitutional rights. And you ignoring it, or you simply complying with it, is the problem. It's not the fault of the cop that you're just being panicked into it. You know, they've got the tools that they have, and they have legal capability of using them. But what it results in, that's up to you. You know, if they're just knocking on the door, you don't open the door. You talk to them from outside. You talk to them through a window or something, and you say, no, you may not come in. Situation resolved. You know you're not doing anything illegal. You know you're not doing anything to harm anybody else. So what business do they have to come and disrupt your family gathering? In my book, they don't have any. Not while this is still fucking America. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. And you know we're going to go with Body Count, because I got a new fucking Body Count album. And so, of course, that's exactly where we're going to go. And I've got it playing in the background right now, and so it's gone through a couple of the songs. And let's see. I'm going to go with Point the Finger, First Dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was Fear Factory with Crisis. And, you know, that one was not actually intentional. I kind of let the program pick that one out. And what's really interesting about that song is the album that it's on. There was this album a long, long time ago, before Fear Factory came out with, I think it was like Soul of the New Machine or some shit like that. Before they came out with that one, they made this other album. It's called Concrete. For whatever reason, I don't remember the exact reason why, but apparently they'd written it. I don't know if they recorded it. I think they had recorded it, and that's why it sounds like shit, despite the fact that they released it a significant period later. And I'm sure it probably had something to do with the rights to the music or their contractual obligations at the time, or whatever reason. This album just like stayed on the shelf for a long time. And what was really funny about it is when I bought it, I think it was like, I want to say it was like 2003 or 2004. And I thought it was a new album. And at the time, they were in a lull between releases. So it was perfectly conceivable that it was a new album. It turns out that it wasn't a new album. It was a really old album. But for whatever reason, they released it like as in the time period where it would have been a new album. You know what I mean? Like, or they released it, and at the time it would have been a new album for them because they released several albums in between when it was actually made and when it was actually recorded and when it was actually produced and put out. Really weird. Music industry is full of all kinds of shit like that. Personally, I'd kind of like to fix it. I'm not entirely sure how to do it, but I know it's possible. You know what I mean? Because like the show exists, and the media capability exists, and the technical capability exists. And honestly, I think that out of all of the streaming bullshit that's going on, radio, like I'm doing it, is one of the very, very few elements, or like conduits, media conduits, that is at the same time very ubiquitous, very easy to use, and already established. It's fucking radio, man. I mean, we've been doing radio for the last century or so. So, you know, to me, it's kind of obvious that there are certain little adjustments and certain things that can be done a little bit differently. And I mean, I got it all mapped out in my brain how I want to do it, or how I would like to do it, the most perfect way to do it. Because a lot of the elements are already out there. It's just a matter of like putting them together right, and all into one package to where nobody will bitch about it. Because like the way I look at it, when I was living down in Los Angeles, and I'm sure every one of you has noticed this, and especially in the metal scene, where there is really, really fucking shitty bands on the radio stations, and then there's really, really good bands in your record collection. For whatever reason, they don't play the stuff that's really, really good that you managed to ferret out because a friend of a friend of a friend's brother-in-law's cousin is in a fucking band, and he managed to get a hold of one of their demos, and somehow or another it got spirited into your possession, and all of a sudden you're aware of this band that's from some bumfuck town in England or something like that, and the only way you heard about them is you were helping somebody move, and this box fell off of the top of another box, and it fell on the ground, and this tape fell out, and you picked it up and you said, "Hey, can I have this?" And that's like that is too fucking incidental. That's why that band never went anywhere. That's why the lead singer is now cutting hair in that same fucking town, and the guitarist is playing, he's working in a fucking auto shop somewhere. He's 3 fingers short because of a car accident last year. I mean, come on now. That's why that shit happens. It's because the media capability of music, like what you can do with music, and then when you add it to the internet, I mean, all the little barriers, all the little incidentals, a lot of them go away. You know, all the little accidents that keep things from happening, all the little containments, all the little barriers that stop things from happening, that stop you from knowing about that person because their band got popular when they were actually still touring. You know, a lot of those incidentals can be done away with, you know, and we can open up the sphere of the internet to enable us to do a lot more things. And, you know, it really bugs me because a lot of the companies that are making projects in the crypto space and just in software and hardware in general, they've all got this idea, and it's all like, they want to be the central people in control. They want to be like the Ma Bell in control of everything you do with your fucking computer. And see, to me, that's like the complete wrong way to think about anything digital. Complete fucking wrong way. The way we need to address anything to regards to internet, telecommunications, any of that shit, is the way that Gibson Guitar regards one of their guitars. See, when you buy a Gibson guitar and you take it home and you write a song on it, Gibson does not get a fucking cent out of anything that you create with that fucking guitar. Their sole concern is producing a better fucking guitar than Fender or anybody else out there, to provide a greater appeal to the artist, the person who's going to be using it to make the music, than any of the other instruments on the wall. They've got to provide you something in the experience of producing the music, or in the sound that the instrument creates, that is unique and beholden unto themselves. And in reality, you don't need IP protections for something like that. You either produce it or you don't. Somebody else has it and you don't, or you're working to make it better than theirs or whatever. And if anything, IP protections hold us back. And in a time of the internet, when we can document when you created something from the point that you created a prototype to it, to the point that you sold it to your first customer, to the point that you opened up your third manufacturing unit, we can see all of that. When somebody else can't provide that kind of lineage of the development of their product, that they're a faker. Now, of course, if you don't worry about IP protections, they can always say, hey, I'm better than that guy. And they can even spend money on AstroTurf to get other people to tell you, hey, he's better than that guy. But if when you're actually using it, it's not better than your existing experience, or maybe experience that you've seen other users have with other devices, then you're not going to buy that product. You're going to buy the one that you're having the best experience with. And with the internet, we have the capability of sharing the full benefit of using a particular product over another to everybody on the fucking planet. Now, why that doesn't appeal far more than the idea of turning the internet into this huge panopticon that watches your every fucking move and transmits brainwaves to you and make you think stupid things and make you do stupid things. I don't know. I cannot fucking understand that. You got people talking about the singularity and all that. And, they always talk about it in terms of like the Terminator, with fucking robots being used to make humans subservient and slave-like. Or some vision like the Matrix, where we're nothing more but a fucking battery. And essentially, the visions that people like Microsoft, and even a lot of people like in, I would say, Blockstream, the visions that they have is that they're like the one provider, the one conduit that you gotta go through. And they completely discount the concept of choice. They want to take that away. You don't need that. I find it very disappointing that there's people out there that actually encourage that kind of mimetic in the way that they talk. As a matter of fact, I was a big fan of Joe Rogan up until relatively recently. And mostly it was this last year. It seemed like his stuff was ever more saturated with more and more ad shit. Whether it was him pimping show dates for himself or people that were on there, or books, or, various articles that are on his desk. It's like product placement in a movie, where there's a Pepsi can and shit like that. And it's like, okay, I can take being sold a little bit. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, wait a minute. I wonder how long it's been solely this kind of conduit. And I would imagine it probably started with the fleshlight, that, the ad control. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really hesitant to pursue any kind of commercial relationships with regard to the show, because I find the influence that seems to develop on the part of the host is always bad. It affects the mimetic of the enterprise entirely. Because there's more interests involved. It's not just the host, and of course they don't just have to worry about their own liability. They have other concerns. They have other interests involved, and of course that always clouds one's vision and starts distorting your value proposition of exactly why you're doing what you're doing. And so, when I'm listening to Joe and he's all blabbing on like, gosh, I wonder how we're going to adjust to this, so it's permanent. No, fuck you, it is not. There's nothing that's happened so far that has made me not an American. What has happened has been some individuals acting like that has been possible, or that it has in fact happened. And it's unfortunate, as far as I see it anyway. But I don't see it lasting all that long. I really see that the encroachments will happen until they start running into fingers and limbs and shit getting chopped off by like lawsuits, or people getting up in their grill and shit about it. I really feel like that's going to be the pushback that they need to really flex, And I think that when people observe other people's rights being violated in ways that they personally do not want, that they will react negatively. It's one of the reasons why I don't have too much faith in Microsoft's patent really coming down to anything, because in the long run, their product as they have it right now, it can be presented in a multitude of ways. One, it can be presented solely in game or within regard to like the gaming environment or the Microsoft environment on your screen. However, I believe that the accumulation and monetization of your personal daily activity in your home is such a breach of your Fourth Amendment rights that at one point or another, Microsoft is going to either use something that they've accumulated from one of these private conversations or something within your home, and it will be provable without a shadow of a doubt conclusively in court that it was in fact seized and that you were in fact the origin of it. And that's going to bring all of this shit to a screeching halt. Or worse yet, they're actually going to threaten somebody with blackmail or something, or extortion or some shit like that, and that person will actually have a pair of balls, and for whatever reason, it'll cost more to eliminate them than to let them continue to exist, and they will do the right thing. I can only pray that that person actually exists out there, that situation will in fact transpire, and that I won't, in fact, be the only person out there saying this kind of shit. Anyway, I see this thing online, and I figured we got to go for it because, it's all about cryptocurrencies, kind of, and it's all about the dark net. And to my mind, this is more akin to like the future. As far as like what the technological capabilities that we have and what they enable us to do. It seems this is the more akin to the way it's going to go. Anyway, this is on the Merkle.com. Drug vendors on the darknet struggle with declining Bitcoin revenue. And this is by J.P. Buntix. So yes, penis. And it was authored on April 1st, 2020. There's some obvious consequences to the coronavirus. Various businesses are being put out of business, including drug vendors on the darknet. It is interesting to note how the darknet vendors struggled during the coronavirus crisis. Jesus Christ, I'm having a lot of trouble talking all of a sudden. Darknet Bitcoin revenue is on the decline. More specifically, the people buying items from these vendors are in a real pickle right now. Most of the drug selling spots are under surveillance, making it very difficult to move any sort of product. Given how prominent Bitcoin is as a payment method on the darknet, things are headed in an interesting direction. A lot less money is moving through the marketplaces as demand for drugs is slowing down. Any vendor accepting Bitcoin payments finds himself in an awkward position. There's also the recent Bitcoin price drop to take into consideration. It seems to make people less eager to spend Bitcoin on drugs as well. With darknet revenue falling, one has to wonder how the situation will evolve exactly. Increasing overall revenue should be less of a problem, but one never really knows what the future will bring. As a result, the coronavirus is having a positive impact in this particular department. Many people will be pleased to see how things are evolving, as it may take a while until everything returns to quote-unquote normal. Au contraire. I think if anything, that you'll probably see a decline in Bitcoin being used in darknet stuff, but it's not specifically a Bitcoin related thing. It could in fact be on the supply side. You know, what people seem to neglect is the amount of fiat currencies, national fiat currencies, that are utilized in the exchange of drugs. Another thing they discount is the utilization of stable coins for the same purpose. And we've talked about this before on this show, but the most traffic as far as a cryptocurrency is concerned, I believe, is on Tether. And from what I understand, there's a great deal of money laundering happening with regard to, oh man, it wasn't even hard to find. I looked up Tether and then money and then space, and laundering came up as the first option. So anyway, from what I understood, there is a great deal of money laundering happening with Tether here. And let me check something out. Look on news, and I find if it's anything recent. We'll go for a month. Here we go. Let's see here. New U.S. launches India, blah blah blah. Showcase, blah blah. No. Let's see here. Drugs. No. Damn it, Jim. I'm trying to find this one article I found. It was probably longer than a month ago, but apparently there was a good deal of money laundering going on involving Tether, and specifically in Russia, and I couldn't remember the specific former Soviet state that it was happening in, whether it was like Ukraine or Belarus or one of the others. But anyway, the point being that, as usual, the vast majority of criminal enterprise is conducted, in fact, in national fiat currencies. I would wager that the vast majority is still conducted in U.S. dollars. And this is despite whatever regulatory shit's going on right now. Now, I have noticed some differences in the types of scams and stuff that I've been seeing. And I could imagine that more of the traffic is in fact happening in Tether and US dollars instead of Bitcoin. And I think that when we're talking about that, you also have to consider the fact that we do have the halvening coming up. I mean, it's not all that far off. It's like, I want to say it's like 30 days from now or something like that, about a month off. And so, you know, people are hodling more. They don't know what the impact of that is going to be. I mean, literally like half the supply, half the daily supply, half the weekly supply, half the monthly supply will be available from now on out. Well, at least for another 4 years. And then after that, it'll get halved again. And so that's going to have an impact on the price. And especially now, especially when we're talking about vast amounts of fiat currency being issued back out onto the markets, in the form of disbursements from the Fed directly, and also their investments, because they do have an internal trading desk, a fact that a lot of people seem to forget. And it's something to keep in mind, man. I mean, you could be trading against the Fed right now and not even know it. But anywho, yeah, so I guess there's a little bit of dry up with regard to Bitcoin available out there for transacting for drugs. Let's see. But there was some other stuff I wanted to cover in here. No, not that one. Oh yeah, this one is fucking hilarious. And it's got to be just like a misquote or an offhand quote or something to that effect that all this can be attributable to. And this is on CryptoTicker.io. U.S. War Economy Act. Trump orders Google to mine Bitcoin due to coronavirus crisis. And this is authored on April 1st, 2020, so it's just as likely it's an April Fool's joke. But anyway, continuing on. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, is taking unusual measures to combat the coronavirus by activating martial law, which he has not done. Trump can now give instructions to private companies. This was now done to force Google to mine Bitcoin. This marks the second time in a week that Trump has made use of the War Economy Act. After unsuccessful negotiations, he recently ordered General Motors to manufacture 100,000 ventilators for overcrowded American hospitals in 100 days. Google and Bitcoin mining. The idea to mine Bitcoins was nevertheless somewhat unusual and probably arose spontaneously during briefing with the press. When asked by a reporter about how to bear the cost of the corona crisis, Trump answered that he already has some ideas how to reorganize the state budget with, quote, amazing technology. Trump went on to explain that he would order Google to mine Bitcoin and to do with, quote, crispy clean energy. He also added, Google can find anything. Everyone uses Google. I have no doubt Google will search and find Bitcoin blocks. I love my Google. I know everyone at Google. Google's computing capacity is huge. Believe me, it's the best. This has got to be it's got to be some bullshit. As a matter of fact, but I found it somewhere else, and that's what bugged me, is that, where is it? I found it on one of these fucking things, extension rulemaking, blah blah blah. No, that's not it. I could have swore it was a CoinDesk article, or it was Cointelegraph, or one of the other ones. And let's see here. Let me see if I can find it. Or no, pandemic. Fuck you. GitHub is bringing. Oh, that's interesting. I might cover that. Blockstacks with patent. Fuck you. Financial models moving back to having. No. Damn it, Jim. Let me see if I can find it. It should be fucking easy to find. Bitcoin, Trump, mine, Google. No, that's the same article we had. Here we go. Donald Trump, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies aren't money. No, that's not it. Let me see if I can adjust the time and if that will affect it. No, it's just that one fucking place. So it's got to be bullshit that he said anything concerning Bitcoin. My apologies. I don't want to be running any fucking April Fool's joke on this show. No disinfo here. Not intentionally, anyway. But yeah, I thought the idea was hilarious. because it would make Bitcoin go down significantly, knowing that that the U.S. government... Wait a minute. It's on Reddit. Huh. Maybe that's where they originally found it. Let's see. Your submission has been flagged for removal because it doesn't meet the quality standards at this time. That's interesting. I strongly... Yeah, and it's... Of course, it's back to this Crypto Taker article. Yeah, whatever. It's got to be bullshit. Because I don't even see the tweet referenced in here, so... Yeah. Anyway, so I thought it was hilarious, and yeah, if it were something that that Trump did order and people actually were considering complying with it, I think it would make Bitcoin's price go down, not up. But yeah, it seemed fucking ludicrous, and I'm pretty sure it was bullshit. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down with some music, and where to go, though? Here we go. A little bit of Slipknot, Skeptic, here on Coin Metal. And that was Slayer with Dissident Aggressor. And that was off of Seasons... No, not Seasons. South of Heaven. There we go. South of Heaven. Yeah, that whole album is really good. Like everything that Slayer did between Rain and Blood and Seasons in the Abyss, all that stuff is fucking awesome. After that, when they went to Divine Intervention, I found out why that album is so fucked up. It's because they actually recorded it in 3 different studios. Like they would record part of it in one studio, get kicked out, recorded in part of it in another studio and get kicked out, and then they got into a 3rd studio and managed to finish it. And that's why that album is probably the most goofy out of all of their... Well, I don't know. I think they kind of went off the rails from there. They were having a bit of issues before that with regard to Dave Lombardo not feeling like he was being compensated like Dave Lombardo should have been. I have no idea what the whole thing is like, but I do believe that the whole radio kind of model and whatnot can be modified in such a way that artists are compensated to the point where they don't have that kind of itty-bitty bullshit. You know, it's like everything is really transparent. And I think that if bands were to go along with the kind of model that I'm suggesting, that they get compensated a lot better than they do now. I don't know. I think it's goofy because, like I said, you know, it's like there's bands that were shit, you know, and they would just be like in this trend. It's like, oh, that guy made money, you know, he's drawing ass to seats, so we got to do what he does. And then before you know it, everybody's got to do what he does, or nobody makes any money. And that's just bullshit. It's fucking famine mentality. You know, the fact of the matter is either you can fucking bring it or you can't. And trying to fake it by trying to be like somebody else, that lowers the likelihood that over the long term you are going to be drawing the butts to the seats. If you can bring something unique to it, while streaming can enhance your exposure, it's never going to replace the live event. Ever. I don't give a fuck if you're live streaming a live event. It's still not going to fucking replace it. There's something about the magic of fucking being there in front of the crowd and the crowd responding to you and your energy coming back to the crowd. That relationship can't be achieved over fucking streaming. It can't. If you've ever been to a fucking metal concert like of a band that you love and they really fucking brought it, you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. There's like this symbiotic connection between you and them, and you know, it's not a material one, but goddamn, I defy you to tell me it's not real. You know, if you were there and I was there and we fucking looked at one another during the fucking pit, and you'd fucking see it in my eyes, I'd see it in your eyes, and you'd fucking know exactly what I'm talking about. You cannot achieve that via live streaming or fucking VR or some other bullshit like that. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. So yeah, Darknet, I think that they're going to end up switching over to Verge and smaller cryptocurrencies. This is an obvious progression, and I don't know why it's not more obvious to more people. You know, that Bitcoin, while being cool, and it is really cool, and it does a lot of things, but the transaction fees are just too fucking high for what this can do and how cheaply it can be done for. And so that changes the value of altcoins. I mean, if you can achieve the same thing with an altcoin that you can with Bitcoin, what does it fucking really matter? You know, and I would argue that if you were using something like Doge, that its exchange rate against the US dollar or other fiat currency is steady enough that if you make a transaction right now, a couple days from now, it'll still be worth what it's worth right now in relative value to the US dollar. And so, you know, there's big concern with, you know, with Bitcoin being volatile and cryptocurrencies being volatile. Yeah, they're volatile. But for the most part, if you look at the charts, there's a few really steady ones out there that are perfectly practical for retail business. And if you're able to get over your own little phobia and bias, and you start evaluating a currency based on the values behind it, you know, do you value Bitcoin's secure, huge ass network? I mean, you know, there's something to be said for that much power being dedicated to it. Although it has been declining slightly with these low Bitcoin prices. I can only imagine that energy prices are going to pick up in the midterm. I won't say long term, but I think that what we're looking at right now with regard to the price of US dollars versus oil is a temporary aberration. And that before long, the supply will get slowed down enough to the actual output level that the amount that is charged per gallon is going to go up. It's going to make energy go up in price, so on and so forth, going to make Bitcoin go up in price. You know, currently we're having a couple events, you know, and these events happening in a synergy are really distorting the relative value of things like oil and gold and silver. A lot of gold operators have simply shut down. And it is because they cannot recover enough on the ounces of gold that they're pulling out of the ground. They can't get enough US dollars for those ounces of gold to be able to afford to go back out and get more ounces of gold. I mean, when you've hit that inflection point, eventually it's going to translate to where your paper gold gets really fucking expensive too. Because then you're relying solely on the above ground reserves and not even bothering to count the shit that you're speculating on its production rate of. You're not even worried about that because it's suddenly becoming really volatile and sporadic what new supply is coming into the market. You know, at the same time, you got to be terminating enough hands that those gold bars are supposed to be in. Because every gold bar above ground has probably thousands of claims against it of exactly who owns it. And everybody knows that, like, one person takes possession of it, they fuck everybody else up because they're counting that gold on their asset sheets. And if somebody claims it and it's no longer there, they're defaulted on their gold, and they might get paid back by insurance or some shit like that. But at some point or another, that insurance company is probably counting that gold as an asset too. And so if they default, they can't repay the company back. And it's a cascading kind of thing. That's one of the reasons why people don't take possession of the gold, not physical possession of it. It's why it can sit in Fort Knox and they just swap IOUs back and forth. But the problem is those IOUs have been rehypothecated to a bazillion And so you got like 1,000 claims to 1 bar of gold. You know, I talked about that multiple times on this show, and it's one of the reasons why you cannot associate a cryptocurrency to a physical commodity such as gold, oil, silver, diamonds, anything like that. Because, like, I can take a static video of a pallet of gold bars, 15 minutes, put it on a fucking loop. You know, maybe every 2 hours or so, I'll walk by a two minute frame. You know, I'll sit there with the checkboard. Oh, yep, still here. You know, and I'll fool your computers enough to where they say, yep, that's a unique time signature. That's a unique recording. So chances are it's legitimate. And I'll have it going in real time. You won't even know it. I'll swap feeds. You won't even know it because it's happening on my side. And I might do it from multiple angles. And so that doesn't just fool you, it also fools all of your affiliates that have unique options on that same gold, where they're looking at it and they see some guy, maybe they can see my face or something, maybe they can't from the angle they're looking at, reviewing the gold. Only I send that to you just a few minutes off. And so it's the same feed, but it looks like it's happening at a different time, and another person is doing it. So it gives everybody else, all my customers, the impression that I've got all kinds of fucking gold. They've all got ownership claim on this pallet of gold. What they don't know is I've got about 300 video cameras. They're all painted green so I can green screen them out. And the whole background around it is all green screen. You know, they don't know any of that. They weren't there to see the construction of the set or anything like that. They're trusting me. They're back to trust. It's one of the things that Bitcoin was made to eliminate, the need for trust. That I wasn't rehypothecating the same gold that I said that you had ownership of. To eliminate me as the authenticator of the claim. And replacing me with your computer and a network of thousands of other computers, all working on the same work and the same claims of ownership at the same time, with the same information available. And that's one of the things that makes cryptocurrencies so valuable in and of themselves. And it's one of the things that you can't actually replace with a singular entity such as like Microsoft being the provider of the quote-unquote blockchain and you just being the recipient of their data, or the provider of data to them to hash the data back out to you. And that's something that's kind of lost in the vocabulary when people are talking about quote-unquote blockchain. You don't know if they're talking about Bitcoin. You don't know if they're talking about Litecoin, Monero, Verge, 5,000 other cryptocurrencies. You don't know if they're talking about Microsoft Azure. You don't know if they're talking about Hyperledger, or you don't know if they're talking about any of these things. Gemini coin, which is a US dollar stablecoin. You don't know if they're talking about that. The term blockchain could apply to any of them. And I think that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that have individual currency networks out there will win out, because the information for them is publicly available. There's no opacity there. There's no Federal Reserve in the background. There's no Microsoft in the background just issuing tokens willy-nilly without your knowledge, or by means that are not available to you. And I think, and again, this is one of the things that drew so many people to Bitcoin, was the prospect that they themselves could be a provider. They themselves could be a part of it. It's one of the things that continues any kind of interest in Lightning Network, is because it's got that same promise of you can participate without the same hardware debt of you having to buy several ASIC boxes in order to do it at a profit. But, we're seeing now that it's not working out to be profitable to be doing that, just because you're not getting enough in transaction fees to do it. And there's been a drop in the amount of hashing power on the Bitcoin network. Eventually that's going to cause a drop in difficulty, and it's going to make it easier to mine. So people that are currently mining, or people that were mining before and have deprecated hardware or deprecated by today's standards, would then be able to mine it again at a profit. And this is the revolution that's going on. People, this whole little tweet about Trump calling on Google to mine Bitcoin. What's hilarious about that is that if Google were to do such a thing, and in the name of the U.S. government, it would devalue Bitcoin, because it would eliminate your ability to mine. It would drive the fucking difficulty through the roof for them to do it, because that's the only way they'd be able to do it at a profit. And I would imagine it would probably cause a significant number of hodlers to depart. Just sell off their coins, say, fuck you. But then again, it would probably cause some other hodlers to want to hold on to it, because they know that any such change is temporary. We've seen it a million times expressed in cryptocurrencies. And this is why it is so vastly important to try and take away your choice, or your ability to choose to involve yourselves in these coins, in these currencies. Is because once you do have the choice, or are aware that you do have the choice, there's no longer the threat. There's no longer this, you will do what I say. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to act that way on your network? Okay, I'm going to stop converting any of my energy to monetary value on your network. I'm going to go to another. I'm going to go to Litecoin. I'm going to go to Monero. I'm going to go to somebody else who doesn't have your fucked up attitude, and I'm going to convert my energy of my daily activities, or whatever it may be, to that network, to that coin. I'm going to put my confidence over there. Bitcoin didn't eliminate this choice. It enhanced it for everybody, because it's an open source project. And this is something that's lost on a lot of the monopoly-minded individuals. They still think things like, oh, let's get the U.S. government to get Google to fucking mine Bitcoin. Give me a fucking break. Google's got far better reindeer games to play than mining Bitcoin. Although, it would increase the relative value of Bitcoin, at least for a short period of time, until people started reflecting on the fact that Google already uses a lot of the data that they accumulate for evil purposes. And so, the idea of ceding to Google your financial controls, or or control over your financial information, I don't think it'll be all that appetizing to many. Anyway, let me see. There was another thing I wanted to cover on here. No. There has been a little bit of a recovery with regard to altcoins out there, and I do expect that trend to continue. God damn it. I'll tell you what, I am really not liking CoinDesk's new layout. They took a perfectly functional website and they turned it into something that I'm sure is really wonderful to view and use on a tablet. Sucks on a desktop. Let's see here. Yeah, this seems kind of interesting. And this is on CoinDesk. GitHub is burying Bitcoin code inside an Arctic mountain to ride out the next 1,000 years. And this is authored on April 1st, 2020, so it could in fact be an April Fool's. This is authored at 8 UTC and by Alyssa Hertig. So no penis. An icy mountain in Norway's Svalbard, an all but uninhabitable Arctic archipelago covered in glaciers and inhabited by polar bears, is an unlikely safe haven for cryptocurrency code, let alone a pillar of modern-day civilization. But it's here. 250 meters underground in a forsaken coal mine that GitHub has chosen to store reams of open-source code. That includes Bitcoin Core, by far the most popular code implementation of Bitcoin's underlying infrastructure, and one of the most used repositories on GitHub. As a part of an archiving program for safeguarding an important part of technological history, a quote snapshot of all of this code will be copied onto film reels and stored in a steel container, all done in an effort to keep data alive and unscathed for 1,000 years. The team is currently getting this data ready. The official deposit into the mountain is planned for late April, a GitHub spokesperson told CoinDesk. But while Bitcoin Core is featured, most cryptocurrency projects stored on GitHub will also be included, including Bitcoin's forward-looking Lightning Network and code behind other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum and Dogecoin. Organizations like the nonprofit Digital Library Internet Archive and the future-looking Cultural Nonprofit Long Now Foundation are backing the effort, and historians, anthropologists, and other scientists are advising it. Bitcoin and Ethereum coders are fans of the initiative. The more backups, the merrier, as Ethereum developer Ligi put it to CoinDesk. Quote, I think it's likely that at some point in the future, the electronic record will be lost. It's all pretty fragile. Preserving some things on hard copy could definitely help avoid a hole in history, said Vladimir Vanderlaan, lead maintainer of Bitcoin Core. The archive potentially provides a way for people up to 1,000 years from now to figure out what on earth cryptocurrency was or how it evolved, if it manages to last a millennium. In one sense, this is a fascinating section of financial history that we should preserve for future study, Avanti Chief Technology Officer and Bitcoin Core contributor Brian Bishop said. History's limits. While archiving cryptocurrency code could plug historical holes for historians, there are limits to what storing this information will enable. Vanderlaan pointed out that from a software engineer's perspective, the code might not make much sense to coders hundreds of years from now. I beg to differ, dude. Quote, as a developer, I do find the idea of a future historian trying to puzzle together our, quote, what goes for civilization from reams of clever hacks, spaghetti code, and context-specific source code kind of amusing, Vanderlaan said. Well, when you put it that way, yeah, it does sound kind of funny. Jason Tuch, the founder of Ethereum infrastructure project TrueBit and a computer science researcher, argued similarly. Expectations of the code should sit alongside the raw material. Quote, these social, economic, regulatory, and academic records depicting motivations and resources for code development may ultimately become more important than the code itself, he said. I think he might be right on there. As a developer who hosts a wiki for futurist technological ideas, Avanti's Bishop is looking to preserve information even further into the future. In fact, Bishop is awaiting a patent for a way to store information inside of DNA. God damn, that's pretty futury. He notes that the genetic instructions guiding an organism's growth can preserve information for hundreds of thousands of years. I would argue probably even longer than that. And while this project could help preserve some history, Bishop argues there's plenty of other important information out there that should be stored in a similar fashion. Quote, beyond GitHub, I think they need to seriously consider archiving Sci-Hub, which has over 70 million scientific articles. Bishop said, quote, it's one of the great feats of human intellect and progress, and it needs to be preserved. I agree with that. And I think that kind of future thinking, as far as DNA incorporation and whatnot, that's cool. I think one of the ideas that's always appealed to me has been crystalline lattices. Like crystals, using them as storage medium for digital archives, and if not, executable code, which I think would be entirely possible. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down with some music. And of course, I played a great deal already, so that's kind of left me in a little bit of a drought of what to start with. Let's go with a little bit of periphery here. And as far as what song to start with, It's Only Smiles, here on Coin Metal. And that was an oldie but goodie, Judas Priest, Electric Eye. Yeah, too prophetic for my good. I mean, too prophetic, man. They were way ahead of the curve on that one. But as far as what we're going to finish up with, I've had this tab open for I don't know how long. At least since the 29th. And I've been curious about it. So here it goes. Cointelegraph.com. And this is by Adrian Zmudzinski. So yes, penis. BitMEX Research unveils who funds Bitcoin network development. The research arm of cryptocurrency exchange BitMEX sheds some light on who is funding the development of the open source software behind Bitcoin. According to a BitMEX research report published on March 28th, blockchain firms Blockstream and Lightning Labs are the largest contributors to Bitcoin development. On the other hand, Bitcoin research firm Chaincode Labs is the largest financial supporter of Bitcoin Core software development, the researchers note. Quote, we conclude that the situation is more healthy than it has been in the past with respect to the availability of finance, transparency, and the degree of distribution among financial backers. BitMEX researchers used publicly available information and data obtained from the individuals involved to create what they believe is the most comprehensive picture of open source Bitcoin developer funding. According to the data, Blockstream and Lightning Labs both employ 8 developers to work on Bitcoin, followed by Square Crypto, which employs 7. Also, MIT's Digital Currency Initiative, DCI, has 6 developers dedicated to Bitcoin, as does Chaincode and Purse. BitMEX researchers also looked at the activity in the Bitcoin Core repository in an effort to identify the top contributors and determine their source of funding. This data shows that 11 out of the top 33 most active Bitcoin developers are independent. 7 are paid by Chaincode, 3 by Blockstream. Oh, that's terribly interesting. So, despite the fact that people aren't getting paid for it, the vast majority of the code development for Bitcoin is actually being done by the same people that started this shit, volunteers. Independent people such as yourself. Bitcoin development sees stable funding. As an increasing number of companies and institutions view Bitcoin as an important piece of infrastructure for both the future of finance, the project sees an increase in entities that fund its development. As Cointelegraph reported at the beginning of the current month, Square Crypto, the payments company launched by Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, is now supporting Bitcoin development grants. Yeah, wonderful. This graph should tell you all you really need to know about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And it's this, that the vast majority of the targeted and interested contributions to this system and these coins is not coming from financial entities, is not coming from developers such as Blockstream or Lightning, but in fact people like you. You know, people who have nothing but a little bit of time, a whole lot of passion, and some coding skill. All the money that MIT's thrown at it and Intel's thrown at it and in chain code, Blockstream, MIT, all these guys. And they have literally thrown hundreds of millions of dollars at projects in cryptocurrencies. Despite all of that investment, the vast majority of the development that's happening in cryptocurrencies is being done by people that live in college dormitories. And they're doing it for free. I mean, what's that really tell you? It tells me that there's a whole lot of interest in cryptocurrencies, far more than is being credited towards to the general public. And I think that it's one of the things that makes this space so interesting. It's one of those incentive aspects of cryptocurrency. See, people devote that much time and effort to developing for Bitcoin, even in Lightning, which is obviously going to be the property of proprietary holders and license holders and registered people and all that other shit. Despite all that fact, all of those projects are dependent upon you to be contributing to them. If you're not contributing to them, you could just as likely be contributing to another competing service, competing currency. And you're far more dangerous to them as such than if you're working with them. And see, this is the big risk that they always face within Lightning. And it's something that they believe that they can assuage the market with time and urgency. You know, that something like the COVID could be utilized to urgently push people into using Bitcoin and urgently using Bitcoin as it's like a token-based system, you know, where you are transacting in representations of a percentage of a Bitcoin, or you know, a segment of a Bitcoin, not an actual full Bitcoin or full Bitcoin in general. And I don't know, I see that in itself is going to create too many risks for us. Because, you know, if you take the people that are developing for Bitcoin and you insert them into projects that are against Bitcoin, I mean, if you think Lightning Network is bad now, imagine when you have a significant number of adversarial actors that have the knowledge and know-how that has been so far dedicated to entirely voluntary and productive action. Now, switch that to voluntary adversarial action. I think that's a danger that a lot of people underestimate, and I fear that they will be brought back to reality the hard way. You know, it makes it obvious to me why they've insisted on referring to cryptocurrency projects in terms of quote unquote blockchain, specifically to cover the distinction over, you know, kind of pave it over between a project such as Microsoft and their new cryptocurrency that they just patented, and Bitcoin, you know, something that's the product of public miners such as yourself. And again, it's all a mimetic thing. It's all just to confuse, obfuscate the issue. What ownership, what stake you could really have in this space. And so far from what I've seen, the continuing existence of altcoins, both their networks and their persistence on the exchanges, indicates to you that not everybody's on board with that plan. And you can only imagine that will be expressed even further with the greater number of people that involve themselves in this space, which I see as an inevitability, especially with people sitting behind their computers all day instead of being at work. They're only going to jerk off to porn for so long. Anyway, it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I have not picked anything out, because that's just the way we roll on this show. But I think I'm going to go just a minute over here and go with a little bit of Iron Maiden, old school Iron Maiden, 2 minutes to midnight, last dance here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. Good night.